Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Rajesh Gautam from Dr. Harisingh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya Sagar, Madhya Pradesh, and today I am going to discuss with you about the module entitled Marriage Rules and Marriage Payments under the paper entitled Social Cultural Anthropology. So let's first we come to know the objectives of this module. In this module, you will know about various rules governing the institution of marriage with examples from different communities. I will also provide an informative background about the prevalence of the payments in marriage. You will also know an anthropological outlook on social characteristics and the occurrence of marriage payment. And lastly, you will come to know detailed knowledge on prevalence of bride price and dowry. So, let first we come to the introduction part of this module. As you know, marriage is a universal institution evolved to governing sexual relationship and procreation of children which vary from society to society. Social institutions like marriage are defined by social functions. Each culture provides rules which explicitly define which individual have access to which other. This explicit rule reduce conflict and anxiety and tend to channel sexual energy as well as legitimize childbearing. Despite worldwide variation in marriage pattern, marriage as an institution is universal to all cultures. Why do you suppose some form of marriage transaction is present among all people? One apparent reason is that humans throughout the world have to deal with the potential conflict surrounding access to sexual relations. It is clear that this issue causes anxiety to people. Competition for access to sexual relation is in itself universal. It is therefore logical to assume we should see a universal need for cultures to have a specific transactions, contracts which clarify and define these sexual issues so as to smooth the way for our group existence. Each culture provides rules which explicitly define which individual have access to each other. These explicit rules reduce anxiety and conflict among the individuals. Let's now come to know logic behind marriage rules. Why do all cultures have some rules or prohibitions relating to marriage? One factor is the biological inbreeding disadvantage and promiscuity. People now have realized that children of close relatives often have physical defects and abnormalities common in the family, and so incest prohibition amount to primitive eugenic codes. A second biological based explanation says that close family members have an instinctual repulsion towards incest, and the social taboo merely reflects this natural response. However, if it were instinctual, there would be no need for the taboo and incest would never occur. As a third factor, we can point to the advantage of the social alliances between families or clans that result when marriages within families are prohibited. One can imagine that over the millennia, the groups that had forbidden their sons and daughters to marry each other and that sent them off to another groups would have long term advantages over groups that did not allow this course. They would have a ready made basis for political, economic, and military alliances. A fourth factor and more subtle social theory holds that incest laws prevent social role conflicts that might be caused by marriage between core relatives. Thus, the relation of parent to child or brother to sister might be in conflict with the relation of husband to wife. So, societies make sure that no one is both parent and spouse another person. Every culture has some specific incest prohibition designating some kin relationship for which marriage or sex is forbidden. Incest prohibition and rules of exogamy are similar in which both work to prohibit certain kinds of relationship. Incest rules over both marriage and sex and specifies certain kin relationship. However, exogamy rules concern marriages only. The most commonly prohibited relationships are those between direct lineal kin, for example, parent and children, and between siblings. Even in this case, there have been some exceptions. The royal families of certain kingdoms like Hawaii, Egypt, and others were considered so sacred and separate from the ordinary people that brothers and sisters, more commonly half brothers and half sisters, could only marry each other so as to marry anyone else would be too polluting. Now let's we come to know rules of marriage. Marriage controls and regulate sexual behavior, descent and inheritance also contribute to universality of marriage. Human beings control the society through prescribed rules and regulations. Marriage gives security to children. It also facilitates balanced upbringing. It promotes organic solidarity, enabling cooperation. Generally speaking, comparing customs across many cultures, a marriage confers exclusive sexual access to a woman and her husband. To a much lesser degree, in many cultures, wives have exclusive claim on their husband's sexuality. This issue is often greatly complicated by the coexistence of quite conflicting norms, especially for men. Some cultures subscribe to an ideal principle that men should have sex only with their wives, while in reality, men may be allowed or even expected to be sexually active outside marriage. In some cultures, extramarital sexual relations by men are tolerated as long as these affairs are not made public. Extramarital relations by women are less acceptable in almost all societies. In order to prevent such type of relations, societies have developed certain rules that also regulate sexual behavior and govern the society. The most common rules of marriage are as follows. or we can narrate it like that. One is exogamy, second is endogamy, then hypergamy, then hypogamy, then preferential and prospective marriages. Now in this context, let me understand exogamy. Exo means outside, gamy means marriage. So exogamy refers to the rule that a man must marry someone outside his own group. The most important reason of these exogamous rules is to prevent marital alliances between the close blood relations and inbreeding, as it is now widely practiced around the globe, is exogamy. If a man and a woman belong to the same gotra, they cannot marry each other. Howell defined exogamy as the social rule that requires an individual to marry outside a culturally defined group of which he is a member. Malinowski assumed that exogamy is the prohibition of marriage between members of one descent group clan, which is explained in incest taboo. Such rules is reported among many Indian population as well as tribes like Gaur, Bega, Ho, Orao and others. Endogamy refers to the rule that a man must marry someone within his own social group, that is caste or tribe. The endogamous rule is to maintain marital alliances between the close blood relations, for example, caste, religion, or tribe. So, in this way, there are two forms of marriages. One is called exogamy and another is endogamy. In exogamy, one have to marry avoiding the close relatives and kin or clan members, whereas in endogamy, one has to marry within his own caste, religion, or tribe. In case of endogamy, marriage cannot take place between the two persons if they do not belong to same caste, religion, or tribe. Howell defined endogamy as the social rule that requires an individual to marry within a culturally defined group of which he is a member. Mostly, this results in conservation of property relations, retention of services, and avoidance of external social bonds. Now, let me discuss another form of marriage known as hypergamy and hypogamy. Hypergamy is a system of marriage where a man gets his daughter married to a person of the same or higher social and economic status. This type of system is found in the stratified societies like Hindus, wherein it is practiced to retain the social status and prestige of the group. In Hindu society, this is known as anulom. Contrary to hypergamy, in hypogamy, a man gets his daughter to be married to a man of either same or lower socio-economic status. In this form of marriage in Hindu society, it is known as pratilom. Pratilom or hypergamy refers to intercaste marriage which are not approved socially. Now let's we come to know preferential and prospective norms of marriages. When individuals or family select spouses, some type of person are ruled out or disapproved of, while others are thought to be particularly appropriate, either because a preference exists in favor of such marriages or because the persons concerned are already related in a particular prescribed way. Marriage preferences are found in all societies, but prescriptions are confined to those exhibiting what Levi-Claude Strauss called elementary structures of kinship. Many elementary structures involve cross-cousin marriage. Levi-Claude Strauss was trying to explain the widespread preference for marriage among first cousins. Elementary structures are not just unusual strong preferences for marrying specific close relatives, but global system of classification whereby perspective relationship terminologies divide up a person's entire kinship universe into marriageable and non-marriageable categories. Now let me discuss marriage payment. Marriage payment are broadly defined by which side pays as well as by recipient. Payments from the bride side to the couple via the bride are classified as dowry. Marriage payment from the groom's parents to the bride's parents are called bride price or bride wealth. Dear students, let's come to know the history of bride price. The custom of bride price dates back as far as 3000 BC. The ancient civilizations of Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Hebrews, and others used bride price. The Germanic tribe, who date from 2000 BC and ruled Western Europe from the 600 to 1000 BC, required bride price for marriage to be legal. A valid marriage contract in Islamic law required a form of bride price. Such transactions are associated with the meher of early Middle Ages. Bedouin tribe of Middle East and countries previously under the Ottoman Empire such as Iraq, Syria, Egypt, Turkey, Iran, Albania, and Afghanistan. Dowry is also viewed as a daughter's inheritance received at the time of marriage. Goodey, 1973, argues that in stratified societies, the wealth of couple become important and a daughter gets an inheritance as dowry to ensure the status of her husband. To explain the timing of inheritances, Botticini and Shaw 2003 argue that the crucial factor is how the son's efforts affect the parental estate, making the son the residual claimant on his parents' property by giving the daughter her inheritance at the time of marriage reduces the incentive problem. However, the primary reason for receiving an inheritance is still same as, which is increased stratification. The management of bride wealth and wife acquisition in African cattle herding society is fundamentally the management of two complementary forms of wealth. It is a complicated process that requires recognition of fertility rate of animal stock, the fertility rate of women, the typical age of marriage of women, and the level of bride wealth or bride price. Circumstances are very different for those Bedouin who use camel as bride wealth. In this case, the growth rate of stock is less than the rate of growth of human group, and the use of camel in bride wealth would impose further reductions in the growth of the herd. Hence, it is not rational to give a daughter in exchange for camels unless there are sufficiently compensating ancillary resources that may be accessed thereby. The commonly chosen option is to promote the marriage of daughters to close agnates who are a member of same herding collective with a special right to daughters by the father's brother's son. However, if a group has lost its camel due to disease or raiding, it may be willing to offer daughters for camel, but this is an indication of severe weakness. In societies with little material wealth and social rules requiring sharing, it is rarely possible to accumulate a bride price. As a result, such societies often have bride service instead, as seen among some Gaud and Begas. The groom agrees to work for his in-laws for a set period of time. Among the Anomamo and other lowland forest dwellers of South America, this type of service may go on for years, and among Anomamo men, the practice is more difficult as they are customarily prevented from speaking directly to their in laws and must avoid them. In most of the tribes of India, bride price, bride service is reported to be prevailing. Some of these tribes are Kharia, Ho, Juang, Orao, Gond, Bega, and so on. Now, let me come to know the dowry. The dowry system dates back at least to the ancient Greek city states 800 to 300 BC and to the Romans by around 200 BC. So, the history of dowry is very old. In Greece, Roman institution of dowry was then eclipsed for a time as the Germanic observance of bride price became prevalent throughout much of Europe. But dowry was widely reinstated in the late Middle Ages in medieval Western Europe, and later dowries were common practice among most, if not all, social and economic groups. Since dowry was required under Roman law, dowries were also transferred in many parts of the Byzantine Empire until its fall to the Ottomans in the 15th century. Dowry payments were prevalent in 17th and 18th century also in Mexico and Brazil, where Spanish and Portuguese family law were governed colonial rule. Goody Tambia referred to dowry as a pre-mortem inheritance, as a payment, as a gift to the bride, and as a gift to the new conjugal unit. If we look into the ethnographic records, we find anthropologists referring to each of these things as dowry in their studies of specific cultures. Dowry can also be viewed as inheritance for the woman, though this is usually in cultures where both men and women are heirs. In other cases, such as in socially stratified societies, a dowry gives a woman the security of knowing that after she is married, she can still enjoy her usual lifestyle and, in case of divorce, avoid property and discomfort. If the husband and wife are to be divorced, the wife is able to get back the dowry that her parents had given. Usually, in many cases, a woman who can afford to pay more dowry is able to find herself a rich husband, while in most cases a woman who can dowry less will find poor husband. In Europe and Asia, dowry payment is mainly found among agricultural communities. It is also practiced in Africa. In Indian context, dowry payment is widely prevalent in Hindu society. So, dear students, now let us summarize what we have learned in this module. In every society, rule for marriage exists. There are two things. One is that the institution marriage itself is universal, and so similar the marriage rules are also universal in all kind of society. And why do all cultures have some rules and prohibition relating to marriage should be understood by us. And I thought I narrated the things and you should understand it. Then this question has long been a topic of debate in anthropology, that why all cultures have such rules. Although we do not have the definitive answer, at least 4 sorts of contributing factors exist, as I told you. One of such factor is the biological inbreeding disadvantage and promiscuity. To avoid this biological inbreeding and promiscuity, there are certain rules were formed for marriage by the ancestors for each culture or in all kind of society around the globe. People now have realized that the children of close relatives often have physical defects, abnormalities common in the family, and so incest prohibition amount to primitive eugenic codes. A second biological basis, as I explained you, says that close family members have an institutional repulsion towards incest, and the social taboo merely reflects this natural response. However, if it were instinctual, there would be no need for the taboo. The incest would never occur. So, in this way, this incest prohibition is also an important rule which is applicable and practiced all over the globe. Incest prohibition is such kind of rules in which the close relatives are cannot marry with each other. Then in this way, in this module, we come to know the different rules of marriage like exogamy, endogamy, hypergamy, hypogamy, cross cousin marriages, and so on. Then I also narrated you or explained you different kind of marriage payments practiced in different societies. Dowry is very common in Indian societies, but bride price is also practiced in some of the communities and tribes of India. Thank you.